already
Oh,
got that going, Lena.
you're amazing. Thanks, Jess. And again, a big welcome to everyone who's here with us this late afternoon after the holiday weekend. I hope everyone's doing well and hope you are here for the information session for PC Care, Parent-Child Care. I am joined by my wonderful colleagues, Jess Talpe, who is CARE, so not to confuse with PC Care. I'll share a little bit more about CARE in a second, our project manager, and also our senior technical advisor for safety and wellness, alongside our wonderful colleague, Shefa, who is another technical advisor, part of the unit. And myself, I'm Lena. I am a program officer with CARE in the IRC. So a little bit about who we are representing exactly. So CARE is the Center for Adjustment, Resilience, and Recovery. It's a Category 2 center with the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, and is part of the International Rescue Committee, or the IRC. For those who are not familiar with the IRC, we are an international humanitarian organization funded almost 100 years ago now, providing support for individuals and families impacted by conflict and crisis in more than 40 countries and 28 US cities. In terms of the work of CARE in particular, is we are working with families and children who have been forcibly displaced in order to find culturally responsive, evidence-based, and trauma-informed treatments, resources, services to really address and mitigate the impact of childhood traumatic stress. You can think of the work that CARE does in particular is acting as a bridge between refugee and immigrant providers and mental health providers here in the US. And we do that in various ways, in particular, one, working with communities and the developers of evidence-based practices to adapt these practices and interventions to make sure they are not only culturally appropriate, but linguistically accessible as well. So what we are here to discuss with PC Care. We also provide resources and support so that agencies working in the communities alongside families, trusted by the families, also are able to deliver these evidence-based or evidence-informed interventions. And lastly, providing training and technical assistance on a variety of issues related to forced displacement. So serving families throughout the arc of crisis as well. And with that, I am going to turn it over to my colleague Jess to share a little bit more about PC Care and how you may all be interested in submitting a proposal. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Jess.
Great. Thanks, Lena. And hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. We're just going to go over, I'm going to briefly go over PC Care, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the information that's in the EOI, but I promise we will leave plenty of time for questions because that's really what this time is about. But to start us off, just a brief overview. PC Care, as Lena had said, Parent-Child Care, is an individual treatment program developed by colleagues at the University of California, Davis. And it's meant for parents and caregivers and their children. So it's delivered in person together with a parent and child, or multiple parents, and there can be multiple children as well. The intervention itself provides support and skill building opportunities through that in-person or live coaching and support around parent-child relationship, and really ensuring that we're providing the best support for children who may be in difficult circumstances or situations, particularly in this case, due to the impact of forced displacement on children and their stability, their well-being, and their mental health. We are working with the developers of PC Care as Lena had said, to ensure that this intervention, we selected it because we felt it was culturally appropriate and trauma-informed. We're also working to make adaptations that really bring to light the needs, the desires, the strengths, the resources, the preferences of the communities that we serve. And that is what this pilot is about, seeing how we're doing with that and piloting those adaptations to really help build the evidence base for PC Care and to hopefully be able to see if this works. It's a true pilot. We want to see if this is an effective intervention with the populations that we serve, and then hopefully can continue to share it beyond the pilot organizations. I think we can go to the next slide, Lena. So as I had mentioned, this is a standardized kind of curriculum, but there's a lot of flexibility in how to deliver that. So it contains 7 to 8 sessions. We say that because there might be a need to add an extra session, but the curriculum itself is 7 sessions. And again, it's for parents or caregivers of children between the ages of 1 to 10. And it's delivered individually with that family. So when we say individual, it doesn't mean just one person from the family. It just means one family that we're working with at a time. So it's not a group-based intervention. In those different sessions, the PC Care provider will cover things like the impact of stress on children's behavior, how stress may really exacerbate some existing developmental challenges that all children go through because growing up is hard. It also will address temperament and effective strategies, building off of what the parent or caregiver is already doing to help support their child if the parent or caregiver is feeling challenged by their child's behaviors. And yeah, thanks, Lena. So what we're really looking for, again, this is in the EOI, so I won't go into too much detail, but we're really looking to partner with at least 2 organizations that are US-based public entities that have a history of providing similar projects and are able to recruit from communities that have experienced forced displacement. We're really looking to collaborate closely. When we say we're looking for partners, we really mean that. We partner a lot, and we'll talk a little more about what that looks like. And then in terms of the organizational partners, their participants, so the clients that they're serving, we are looking to ensure that our partners are working with parents and or caregivers of children who are between the ages of 1 and 10. We know many families that many of us serve have multiple children in that age range, which is wonderful as well. That these are families that are based in the US, but they have an experience of forced displacement. And because of the pilot, we had to narrow down the languages that we're focusing on. So we're looking for culturally and linguistically diverse families within the constraints of language fluency in either English, Spanish, or Dari. So we know that's a limitation right now. It's part of the pilot, and our hope is, and our goal will be to add more languages, but we're starting a little bit small to then be able to expand. So what can you expect both from us and what are we expecting from you? So we are hoping that our partners will be able to identify at least 2 individuals in the organization to be trained as PC Care providers or coaches. We want those coaches and ideally a supervisor to go through training. So there's extensive training provided as part of this 9-month project. And so that includes 3 different phases of training, which will ultimately result in those who go through all of those training phases being certified PC Care providers, meaning the organizations that we work with will be able to continue to provide this intervention after this pilot. So our goal is to try to set y'all up for success to continue this work after we end our partnership, or at least our funded partnership. Of course, we are asking for you to recruit families to be a part of this pilot, to participate within the monitoring and evaluation practices. So that includes some pre and post measures, as well as regular check-ins with the families during those 7 to 8 sessions. And then, as I had mentioned earlier, we maintain close partnership and communication and contact with our partners. And so we have weekly case prep calls during initial cases, and we have regular check-ins as both the CARE and UC Davis team with our partners. So we really see each other as true partners in this. Our goal is to try to help facilitate our partners' success in this pilot and to provide as many resources and supports as possible. And so the part that is probably the most important reason you're here is around the funding. So our goal and part of wanting to really support people and being a part of a pilot is recognizing that pilots are not free and that they require time and effort and dedication. And so we are able to, through our funding with SAMHSA, we were able to put aside funding for partnerships for this particular pilot for 9 months, starting in January of 2024. And ending at the end of the fiscal year in September. So almost a year from now, we're looking at $50,000 that we can provide per organization to cover things such as staff time, travel expenses, participant survey incentives, and any program materials that might be needed. There are guidelines. We have explained them and expressed them in the call for expressions of interest, but we just pulled a few important ones out that we have as restrictions from our donor that we then have to ensure that our partners are following as well. And some of those are such as the indirect costs being capped at 8%, which I know is usually a lot lower than most negotiated indirect cost rates. And that we have to really be mindful, and there are some difficult requirements around funding not being able to use, not being able to be used to cover participant transportation, childcare, or lost wages for their time, which I know is a huge barrier, especially the transportation and childcare. Again, we are beholden to the requirements of our donor. Again, we're happy to support. There are lots of information in the call for expressions of interest. And then if you do apply, if we do choose your organization to move forward with us in partnering, if there are issues or questions about the budget, we have conversations. And so our goal is to support you in using the budget to the best of your ability. You can go to the next slide, Lena. Sorry, everyone. Allergies are just not liking me. So we have, as we mentioned, everything, hopefully everything that you need, we hope, is in the request for partner applications. If you haven't received that, I'm sure you have. If you haven't, you can find it on our website. And we'll also share these slides out, which are hyperlinked. Our deadline is rapidly approaching on Wednesday, the 20th. So in just less than 2 weeks at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So East Coast folks, you have, I guess, a little bit of an advantage if you decide to work late. And then we hope to make a decision relatively quickly so that we can begin contracting processes, because that is always a fun process to get through. I will say just a brief mention on how we go about making decisions. Our reviews are fully blinded when we go through that, and we have a panel of reviewers that score and then discuss the different scores. And then only after deciding on the partners who have scored using the rubric that's actually in the expression of interest, that you all can see in that document, then we will know who those organizations are, and then we'll reach out to them to hopefully move forward. If you have any questions, you can also reach out to us on that. As I mentioned, lots of resources. So we will send this out. We have our website. We also have additional CARE resources, as Lena had mentioned earlier, the work that we do as CARE. One large chunk is this partnership around piloting evidence-based mental health interventions for children and their families. But we also provide other training, technical assistance, and resources. So if you haven't, check out our website. There might be some things there that are helpful for you. And great, we left a decent amount of time. My goal is always to get through that as quickly as possible. this is the important time. So we are here to answer any questions that you all have, provide any clarification. So really the time is for all of you at this point.
Hi, Jessica and Lena. How are you both? I hope you don't mind my jumping in. But I hope you feel better, Jessica. I know how the allergies are. I'm like so medicated right now that like, I feel your pain.
They're like catching me at different points, but great to see you, Susie.
Yes,
Please
nice
go
to
ahead.
see you as well. Yes. No, and I'm happy we connected. I know looking back, like I kept thinking like the name is so familiar. And I realized that we've kind of emailed each other, talked since 2018, 2019. And I think we had also discussed this program as well. So just a quick background. So Freshta had reached out to me a few days ago. Freshta is our lead interventionist for Dari speaking community members. And she mentioned that Shifa, I think, had told her about this. And I said, okay, let me pop in and see what it is. So I love the idea. I know how important it is to kind of work with our clients, community members, and their families and children in those stages. I know Freshta had trained with the attachment vitamins program that you guys had. She delivered it. I think the question that I have right now in seeing how could Cornerstone be a part of this process is that currently we are national partners with IRC. So we work with Jessica and Karen at HQ, and we're offering those emotional wellness programs, the on-site workshops, and also the intervention sessions and the support groups to the different populations. I'm actually just finalizing our proposal for next year's work. This year we've been offering it in Dari, Pashto, and Ukrainian and Russian. And we're adding next year Burmese, Swahili, Arabic, and Spanish, I believe. So we're kind of expanding on that end. And I'm just curious, like, is the work that we're already doing with IRC, and before I send in our 2024 funding proposal, essentially, is this something that goes hand in hand? Is it completely separate? Is it even like a conflict of interest since we're already partners with IRC in another way? I apologize if this question doesn't apply to everyone, but I thought it would be a good time to ask it.
Yeah, no worries at all. And thank you for the question, Susie. And yes, always great to be connected. So this work that we're doing is separate from, I know you're working with the Preferred Communities team. And so this is separate from the work the Preferred Communities team does. That doesn't mean there isn't overlap, but our work through the CARE project is really meant to be national in scope and beyond IRC. It's also open to IRC offices, but again, there's no preference or preferential treatment to IRC offices or anyone who has partnered with IRC, which is why we really want to go through that blinded review process to ensure, as blinded as possible, we sometimes redact a little bit of what may be in there to help ensure that we're not biased in any one way as we're reviewing these proposals. I don't believe it would be a conflict of interest, but I'm also not part of our legal team, so we have to double check. But I don't see why it would be an issue for us to partner with you all should you apply and be chosen to be one of our partners.
And I know you kind of gave us like the quick run through of like what the partnership would entail. If I'm understanding it correctly, it would be staff members from Cornerstone would be trained in this method, the method that has been developed. So similar to what we did with the attachment vitamins, like, is that what I'm understanding, or is it different?
Yeah. So attachment vitamins and the work that there are so many intersections and so many overlaps. It's beautiful, but for others on the call, if any of this is confusing, please ask for any clarification. But so the work that we did with Freshta with attachment vitamins was through another project. As there are always so many, but very similar. And we currently, as CARE, are wrapping up, excuse me, pilots of attachment vitamins right now. And so, yes, the way that you described it is exactly it. Our goal is to provide training and really have our partner organizations implement these interventions and then to see if they're working. And the goal of that is not to try to like farm out work in a sense, but really to try to help bring some of these evidence-based interventions into organizations and to communities that otherwise may not have access to them, because they tend to be, one, not developed for the communities that we serve, so they are not oftentimes linguistically or culturally accessible. And so we work to do that work to make sure that they are culturally and linguistically relevant in terms of the examples and the activities that are provided. And then this pilot process is for us, alongside our developers, UC Davis, to learn to make sure that the adaptations that we've been making with our cultural validators and our community are effective. So I don't know if that was a very long-winded answer to say yes.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. Thank you. I think my follow-up question to that is that let's say Cornerstone is, selected as a partner, and I'm guessing you're selecting only one organization that's going to partner with two organizations. Okay.
Two organizations.
So let's say we're one of the two that's selected, and we have our, 3 staff members, the Spanish speaker, the Dari speaker, and Pashto. Was that the other language you were looking for? Or
English, unfortunately.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be all of those languages. So it may be that you choose to focus on just Dari, for example.
Okay. So let's say so we can even just do one staff member. So let's say we have one staff member, they go through the training with you. Does that staff member then provide those services to our community that may not be IRC linked? So we could do it in a mosque, for example, or at one of the refugee service organizations that we work with. So it doesn't have to be in an IRC location to IRC clients.
Not at all. No, that is not a requirement at all. We want you all to serve your clients, and which I know with Cornerstone and IRC it's a little tricky because we share a lot of clients, which is a beautiful thing. But there's no requirement for the recipients of the services to be linked to or affiliated with IRC in any way.
Gotcha. Okay. And sorry, I don't mean to monopolize the conversation. Last question, I promise. But what is the anticipated buy-in? Like, how many families would you want attending or being a part of it in order for it to be considered successful?
Yeah. So we are looking for, and I should know this off the top of my head, 8 to 10 families per coach or per individual. And we would like to have at least 2 people from each organization be trained, just so that there's a bit of a cohort at each organization. So there's not just one person going through this on their own. There'll be a cohort with the other partner organization, but just like to have that building in that support within the office. So we recommend that each person who is trained to coach recruit 12 to 15 clients with the expectation that they'll complete 8 to 10. So we're anticipating some drop off just because life happens, especially with families with little ones.
I'm sorry, one more question, but I open up to anyone else that has questions. I'll be silent for a little bit, and then I'll come back with my other question.
If anyone else, and you all can put questions in the chat too, but Melissa, I see you came off mute, if I'm seeing that correctly.
I'm wondering how this works for individuals we work with who have Medicaid. So they're eligible to get, counseling services through Medicaid. Is that a conflict? Kind of how would that work? Is this only for individuals who are not able to access Medicaid, or can those happen simultaneously?
That is a wonderful question, Melissa. Often we are working with organizations and clients who maybe have Medicaid, but they're receiving services outside of Medicaid, Medicaid approved organizations. And so we are going through this process with the assumption that these services would be provided for free for all of the clients that you would serve. I don't know if that fully answered your question, but I can also do a little bit more kind of research and look into our funding requirements with SAMHSA.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Go ahead. No, I think you were going to answer my question. I was going to ask a little more about what you offer.
We provide specialized services, and one of them is an evidence-based practice. It's a parent-child relational therapy called child-parent psychotherapy, and it sounds like this could be a really great complement to that. So I'm just kind of wondering, when we have people come in, we bill those services as therapy services to Medicaid. So I guess I'm just trying to get a picture of how this can be added as a complement
So, yeah, Melissa, I feel fairly confident in saying you wouldn't be able to bill for these services because essentially we're giving you that funding to provide these services. So you would be double dipping from the federal government by billing for the PC care services.
Okay, that's helpful.
That
So it
makes
would be a
sense.
separate service. That sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for explaining. And we love CPP. That's actually connected to attachment vitamins. So that's great that you're providing that. Any other questions? Elise, Jackie, Susie, of course.
Yes, I do have other questions, but I'll give Elise or Jackie a chance in case they have.
I have no questions right now. Thank you, though.
Of course.
Yeah, no questions from me either. Thank you.
Great.
All right, so I
Susie,
do
all
have a few
yours.
more, guys. As I say, I have a few more, just so that, you know, as we move forward, if we decide to apply for this, we have a better sense of what we're kind of getting ourselves into.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned, like it can be English, Spanish, or Dari is what I'm hearing. So it's not that our two staff members have to speak both. Now, does it work to have one who's an English speaker, one who's a Dari speaker? Let's say we're going in that direction, or would you want them both to be speaking the same language?
I think it depends on what works best for your organizations. We do recommend and want to have the intervention delivered in language. So we recommend not having an interpreter just because the intervention does require live kind of coaching in the moment and knowing just the natural delay that happens with an interpreter that can make that quite difficult. So for the pilot purposes, we're looking for providers who have language capacity. The providers themselves do not have to be licensed mental health providers or clinicians. So this is not something that kind of rises to that level of like a clinical intervention, though it does have great mental health impacts.
Okay. Now, the training, is that something that our staff members would be traveling to a location in order to be trained, or is it virtual, or how does that work?
All virtual. Great question. Yeah, all will be virtually provided.
Okay.
I know in person is always a little better, but
How many hours is the training?
so there are 3 parts to the training. Part 1 is 6 hours. The second part is, I believe it's 12 hours over 3 days. Sorry, I'm not remembering off the top of my head. Bear with me. Let me pull up too many documents open. So part 2. Oh, it's 7 hours. Sorry, got the wrong amount of time, but approximately 7 hours over 3 partial days. And then phase 3 is actually kind of the prep for the first case. So those are kind of weekly consultation calls and support.
Okay.
And I believe we have that information. If you need some of this, it's also in the EOI.
Yes, I'll take a look at that. And since it is a pilot, I'm guessing that you're going to want to get data to kind of show whether or not, I'm guessing qualitative as well as quantitative. Are we responsible then for gathering that data?
Yes, so there are pre and post measures. So mostly we try to stick mostly to the quantitative data just because we know qualitative, we love it, but also takes a lot of time. In terms of the qualitative data, we do have a post intervention survey that we do ask our partners to administer both for feedback and then also any anecdotal kind of evidence that wants to be shared, but we aren't doing any like key informant interviews or focus group discussions. They really are the pre and post measures and then that post group survey. We also, as a care team here at CARE, we have a post-intervention kind of feedback call with all of our partners. So we would meet together with our partners and just ask a little bit about how the experience was, both facilitating the intervention, but also partnering with us because we are always looking for opportunities to improve.
Okay. And you said it's a series of 8 meetings with the families?
7 to 8, yes. So depending on how much time is needed, it may go over into 8, but 7 sessions, which each last about an hour. So not super long and can be delivered in the home, in the office. So it's flexible and remotely as well.
Okay. Are these sessions like individual or are they done with the families all together?
Just one family at a time.
Okay.
And I see Melissa has her hand up. Susie, if you have more questions, we can always get there. Just want to be, recognizing.
I know you said this is not needing to be like a clinical person or a licensed clinician who provides the intervention. Are there any requirements as far as experience, education at all for the people who can provide the intervention?
Not specific requirements. We do request, and we think based on the intervention itself, if the staff members have some background and experience, that doesn't have to be necessarily like a university degree or a formal educational background. It can be on the job training in mental health, just to have that comfort in talking about signs and symptoms and mental health and emotions. And of course, a comfort in working with children and their parents and caregivers, but no particular educational requirement or background for this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. We look to you all to know your teams and know your staff well. And then, of course, we are here to help support them in knowing PC Care.
I do have another question. I'm so sorry, guys.
Go for it. That's what this is for.
I tend to process better when I'm, hearing it verbally rather than just reading it.
Yeah.
So with these families, you mentioned it can take place in the home, it can take place, so we can technically invite these families to our office, for example, and hold the 1 hour session in the office or the library, so the space doesn't necessarily matter, but we can't use the funding to transport the clients, right? Did I read that correctly? Okay.
Yes, we're
Okay.
sorry. It's
Okay.
an incredibly frustrating funding requirement that is from our donor. And we can provide funding for staff to travel. We just cannot provide funding for clients to travel to the services, which is ridiculous. I know.
Gotcha. No, I mean, that's not a problem. Like if we have a grant or other funding that we can supplement, but I'm wondering, with what you can use the funding for, like I know it also said something about 8% only for indirect services, which I'm guessing is like administrative costs or accounting or whatnot. Is the bulk of the funding that 50,000 really dedicated to the trainers? Like, is that basically a salary essentially for them?
Yeah, it's really what we were thinking about, is that we're asking for a lot of time and a long amount of time, a 9-month commitment. And so we want to ensure that the partners that we're working with can adequately fund their staff to be a part of this, knowing that most organizations don't have staff members who have extra time built into their positions and funding.
Yes, yeah.
And some of it can also go, I will say, towards purchasing toys or other materials for the sessions. The only caveat, which is also anyway in the slides and in the call for expressions of interest, is that those materials have to stay with the organization, so they cannot be given to the families, which again is a shame. But they can be brought, like if we're going into the home and bringing toys to play with, we also will be providing guidance on different toys or low cost alternatives to kind of purchasing toys that could be really useful for different age groups as part of the intervention as well.
And okay, I promise you, this is the last question. I think after that, I got it all. But for the 7 sessions, the 1 hour each, are we talking about 7 sessions per family, like of the 12 families that are recruited?
Correct.
Okay, so we're multiplying 7 hours by 12, basically.
Yes.
Over a 9-month period. And
yes.
Do you anticipate it being monthly, like once a month, like each family gets, it's 9 months. I mean, is it like each family is getting kind of the get together, the 1 hour once a month? So you're visiting technically like 10 to 12 families per month?
So it would probably be more on a weekly basis, and we're thinking about having that rolling kind of enrollment for your family. So instead of doing all of the families all at once, being able to parse them out over the year or over the 9 months. Part of the training is that the first case, so the first case or two, so the first family or two that each provider is serving, they need to get consultation during that time, and the developers need to sign off on the provider's competencies in those sessions. So we don't want to start with a bunch of clients all at once. So we'll start with just one or two, and then again, taking into account the other work that everyone else is doing, thinking that it might be easier to enroll a few families at the same time, and then maybe when they're halfway through their sessions, enroll a few more, but being able to kind of have that ongoing work plan of keeping the families going, but not overwhelming the providers. And if you have other questions, y'all can feel free to reach out to us. We'll do our best to answer, and we always try to post on the website any additional questions that we get and answers so that everyone can have access to them.
Just to follow up on that as well, we'll be sure to send an email out soon or shortly after not only the recording of this, which we'll have made available, but as Jess mentioned, sort of the recap, some of the links we brought up, the PowerPoint deck. So we'll make sure to follow up via email as well.
Is there a goal of like getting like several different like counties involved, or like is it like regional? Can you get all 12 families who happen to be living in the same apartment complex, or is there some kind of like reach part of it?
It's all up to you all. Whatever each organization feels is most feasible, right? We want to work with your reaches. So if that happens to be national, amazing. That's great. If it happens to be hyper local in one apartment building, that's also amazing and great. So there's no preference on our end. It's really, again, trying to make sure that this fits. Our goal is for this pilot to fit within the organization's existing work. Maybe it's not something that you've done before or exactly the same, but it fits in some aspect to what you've already done and where you hope to go with your programming. We see our partners as the experts in delivering programs in their communities. That is not our area of expertise whatsoever. We're just trying to see if this intervention can help provide that support to the families in those communities.
Are both staff members going in together to meet each family, or is it one staff
one-on-one?
Okay, so technically it's 12 families per staff member, 7 sessions per staff members, but each organization's essentially doing 14 sessions with 2 different staff members.
Each organization will be doing 7 sessions with 24, like somewhere around 24 clients or families.
Okay.
Questioning my math for a moment. I was like, no, we said about 12 families.
Got it. Makes sense. And it's okay if they're both female, both male, female, like, is there a preference or?
There isn't on our end. The only preference is that you are choosing your staff with intentionality around what feels most comfortable for your communities, right? Knowing that if you're going to be delivering this in home, what is appropriate, thinking about gender roles and, what feels comfortable for families and who can come into their home. And I know that changes family by family, but also thinking about what that looks like in terms of that comfort level and what parents or caregivers you expect to be a part of the intervention. If you think you can get, if it's a dual parent household, if you can get both parents in, fantastic. But if you think it's primarily going to be one set of, one parent, and if that is a gendered parent, if you're thinking you're mostly going to have mothers or female caregivers, then just having that thought process of, well, maybe then you do want to have female providers just for that comfort level. But again, defer to you all to know your communities best and your staff. Obviously, you can't, pull staff out of thin air. All really great questions.
And I'm guessing what you put in the chat box, that's the link to find everything that we need to know.
Correct. Yeah. So basically on that announcement page, you'll find a link to even the overview of just PC Care, um, our proposal details, so that expression of interest that Jess highlighted, in the PowerPoint slide. And also essentially this is our link to the CARE website. So soon we'll also have, I'll be sure to email this out, but just in case, for example, when you go to our trainings page, you'll see all the recordings, including this one today. So yeah, between this announcement page and the trainings, that's where you'll find the bulk of the information about this specific pilot partnership.
With that, we can end and let y'all be on your way for the rest of your day. But as you know, as you've said, as you all know, you can reach out to us. You can reach out to care@IRC or at rescue.org, or you can reach out to any one of us individually, Lena, myself, or Shefa. But we hope to hear from you all, though we won't know it when we're reviewing it, but we hope to eventually know that we've heard from you all in proposing to be a part of this project. And otherwise, we still hope to hear from you and be able to partner with you all in other ways. So thanks for taking the time out and for your interest. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks. And I apologize for